Good day po sir, my name is Niljan Floreta, 3rd year BS Criminology, and this video presentation is for the subject matter Dispute Resolution and Crisis Incidents Management or CRIM6. And today I will be discussing the chapter 3 of our book since we are done in discussing chapters 1 and 2. So the chapter 3's topic is Crisis Incident Management. So in order for us to have a background of what we are going to talk about or tackle in crisis incident management, let us start. So by knowing the nature of crisis and its impeding impact, and as to when and where will it happen, you can be able to develop and anticipate actions that may in one way or the other mitigate the effect to lessen damages, injuries, and death. So in order for us to reduce the risks and the threats of these unforeseen crisis situations, or bisan pa og mga expected incidents, we must be knowledgeable of these situations in order for us to mitigate or reduce the casualties or the injuries and damages that it will put upon or cause. So the first one that we are about to discuss is the approaches to crisis response. General approach: crisis, whether or not naturally driven or man-made, meaning man-made crisis or mga natural crises, mandates that it is everybody's concern since we are all involved. Every one of us is involved in these incidents or situations. The saying goes, it is better to prevent than to cure. It is applicable. So this saying means that proactivity is the best measure to take than reactivity. So we must act upon before the phenomenon takes place in order to reduce, or as I have said, mitigate the damages, injuries, and death. So we understand that crisis and disasters arise from human abuses. So example, landslides, flooding, forest fires happen due to human abuses of natural resources. So ang mga pagmina, ang pagputol sa puno, mga deforestation, muna siya ang mag-cause aning mga landslide, flood, forest fire. If this is the issue, can something be done? Yes. The answer is yes. Sama sa mga tree planting or mga environmental activities na makatabang sa biodiversity ug sa environment, kay kani sila mga activities, it will rehabilitate the natural state, or it will rehabilitate our resources, and therefore it will maintain its integrity, its strength and integrity to produce for us and to protect us. So naay mga certain branches ang government or agencies ang government to act upon this phenomenon, sama sa DANR. So the next lesson is the crisis management strategies. So kung sa lesson 1, approaches to crisis response, kay general approach, which means that we have to be knowledgeable of the possible crisis or in phenomenon that will put or that will do damage, so that we will identify its cause and be able to put solutions by studying what causes this phenomenon, sama sa landslide or mga floods So pag nakabalta sa cause ana, then we will make solutions, then we can mitigate or reduce the damages. And the next is the strategies in crisis. So strategies are specific to every kind of crisis. However, it must be understood that there is no single formula or approach to prevent similar crisis in incidents, but only to mitigate at a minimum. So dili jud mapugngan ang mga katalagman, pero pwede na to silang ma-mitigate, meaning pwede na to silang maiban-ibanan ang ilahang mga damages. So crisis management should be proactive. So as I have said earlier, no, that we must take action before it takes place. No, at all times it will be useless if it is reactive. So ang reactive method manggod, no, kay diha na ka mag-take action if the phenomenon has already taken place. From the word itself, react, you react according to the situation. Ang proactive naman, before pa mahitabo, you already have a preventive measures. So proactive simply means prevention of its occurrence. Management encompasses all action prior, during, and after the crisis. So management prior to occurrence, this pertains to lay down plan of action to prevent the untoward event. So ang example ani, no, nga proactive measures kay ang sa mga vehicular operators or ginatawag nga driver. So ang mga responsible operators of vehicles, before yun na nila paandaron, ilahaning gina-assess ang blow buckets, acronym nga blow buckets. So each letter na ana siya ay corresponding meaning nga mga safety measures bago nga dapat imuhang ma-check before operating your vehicle. So now we will proceed to the examples of how to manage crisis, no? So examples of crisis and how to manage them. So sa libro na ay unom kaklase nga crisis, and it will be defined how to address this such crisis and its type. So ang social crisis, meaning involve ang society, ang community. 9 ways to address and manage social crisis. So una, create a social media policy. So ang social media, no, it is very popular na karon, and tanan bagay, no, kailangan na ay regulation, and to regulate it must have a policy. So policy serves as the roadmap and or regulation for all activities and actions when dealing socially, especially with the social media in today's postmodern condition where communities virtually meet each other and transact business. Such policies regulate the behavior of the community as a whole, and being a policy, it carries with its sanctions for every infraction against the standing policy. So ang policy, no, naana siya para ma-regulate ang mga actions nga tong ginabuhat aning social media. Kay ang social media manggod, yes, it gives us convenience and accessibility. However, it also comes with risks. So diha sa social media pwede ta naada makita ang mga scammers, mga dummy accounts, mga bashers. So kung kani sila pinaagi sa policy, pag nasakpan ni sila, maban ang ilang account or masuspend, no, para dili na sila maka-cause og disputes or crisis sa social media, no, og makapanakit pa sa mga tao. Next is secure your accounts. Social accounts is your personal identity of which it portrays you or portrays who you are in public depending on the contents you are exposing. So natay ginatawag, no, na ang social media is very fake because you only show what you want people to see, or you only show what you want them to know. So kung naglaag kas dagat, mga lingaw-lingaw lang pirmi imong ginapost, pag tuon nila lingawa sa iyang kinabuhi bayoy. Pero ang tinuod, basin dili or basin pag tinuod gyud. So social psychology defined it as the avenue where your personality is being interpreted based on the substance and content of your post, no? So tinuod jud no nga pag imong i-review ang social media profile sa isa ka tao, then you will have initial idea of what this person is inclined to, no? So kung makita nimo ang post niya kay puros mga quotes, then siguro ka siya inspired or grateful. Kung uba naman puros bastos ang gina-post, kaya maniakif tawanan ni. So in order no to by securing your account, no, by selecting what are the contents that you are going to post or expose to the public, then you will be saved from any untoward ridicule and stress. Kay parehaning mga ginaing nato nga vloggers diri makita nato nga ilahang gina-post tanan ang ilang ganap sa ilang kinabuhi, then they are more prone to constructive criticism, no, nga maka-hurt sa ilang feelings or makapa-boost sa ilahang confidence. So number 3, use social listening to identify potential issues. Social media takes over the other news outlets like newspaper, radio, and television. At an instant, you will be informed of updated issues. However, you need to scrutinize these issues because unscrupulous individuals uses the media to influence the public of the illicit agenda. These are known as fake news. So, kabalo man tanan no nga ang fake news is very rampant na sa karong panahon na. Bisag unsa na lay kalat mga issue ang ilang ginakalat to cause panic or hysteria or joke lang para sa ila, pero that's not of your business. Ang kailangan lang yun nimo is to check the reference or the legitimacy of the information that you are about to read, because fake news may lead to dangerous outcomes, no? Define what counts as a crisis. On social issues, crisis emanates from fake news that brings stress to the reading public. It also includes computer viruses that differs and destroy files and informations, like when bank accounts are being attack that causes loss of money from the bank that results into public panic and economic breakdown. So, no, kailangan jud gihapon nato siya i-secure, dili lang sa mga criticisms, dapat i-secure pa tayo sa mga technological viruses. Craft a crisis communication plan. In every organization, it is a must part of the policy action plans such that at any given time when an untoward incident, meaning unexpected incident happen, there is a protocol to follow where all members of the organization and other stakeholders will be immediately informed and warned, and also to report such untoward incident. So parehas sa Facebook, no, pag naay mga fake news diha nga ma-identify or mga very alarming na mga contents nga ma-expose, automatic na ang Facebook management no nga ilahan nang i-remove ang post. Sila na mismo naaman na yung mga spectators ang mga post diha. So automatic na siyang bring down. So the next type of crisis is economic crisis. The disparity of living conditions between the have-ones and the have-nots. So sa economy, no, ang economic status mga dato ug mga pobre continue to separate in a very wide gap. So in the previous chapter, we have discussed, no, the drivers of economy of this crisis, no. Those on top continue climbing, and it seems there is not satisfaction, while those below consistently goes down up to the point of not affording 3 square meals a day. So dali na nato madungog na pud ang cliche nga the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. This is actually an economic crisis. It is a crisis when people at the top abuse their social standing and take advantage over the weakness of others. So mao na siya ang economic crisis. So the following are recommended measures to mitigate this crisis. Stock the supplies necessary to sustain life. This is the expertise of the Chinese people. They are very thrifty since they are very much concerned about tomorrow and complete reverse of the Filipinos who make loans to enjoy festivities and suffer the consequence of paying the loan. No, so in short, mga kuripot ba, mugasto lang gyud ta according sa ato ang panginahanglan, no? So the needs lang gyud ang focus, ang wants unya na ug dato ta stockpile valuable tools. Tools are meant to uptrend production and sustain it with lesser expenses of hiring labor to do it for you. For example, your business is farming. It is better to have your own equipment rather than renting it from others. At the end of the day, you will find out that you are losing investments in a very protracted period. So mas kapo jud no, mag-invest ka sa imuang own tools or sa imong sariling makinarya, kay kung pirmi lang ka magrenta or makigamit, then mas dako imo ang ma-lose na kwarta throughout the years, no? Ang pag-invest man god isa ka dako nga gastuhan, pero magamit nimo siya maybe for a lifetime or mas taas pa nga oras or nga panahon than renting. Grow your own food. Backyard gardening or establishing your own farm will not only give you fresh foods but also sustain food supply. No, so by growing your own food, then you will save money and also have a healthy and fresh meal. Next is prepare to provide for yourself or do without it. Self-sustenance and self-reliance is what is best today. You cannot rely on others to provide for your needs, and the only way to do that is thinking and acting on matters that produces income, no matter how laborious it may seem, since no one will be there to provide for what you need in times when you are economically deprived. So meaning lang ani no, kay dili ka magsalig, kay at the end of the day ikaw lang gihapon ang motabang sa imong sarili, no? Next is prepare to live with little or no electricity. Simple living means healthy living, no? So minimalist tirada. It is true that electricity fuels luxury living, but at the same time deprive us from enjoying the natural provisions of healthy living. So prepare to live with little or no electricity, meaning ay no nga dili ta mag-dwell into privileges or into luxurious lifestyle. Instead, we must live in survival or live according to your needs, no? Kay sa basa kong nabasa, no, there are two ways to get rich: work and earn money, or lessen your desire. Kay kung gamay lang imong desire, then you will be contented easily, no? Dali lang ta makontento. So unsa ka pa nimo nang sobra nimo kwarta kung kontento naman day ka. So the next one is environmental crisis. So it talks about the environment. Disasters brought about by the degraded environment always leave behind widespread devastations like typhoons, earthquake, diseases, and the likes. So recently lang no, nag-viral na po ni about sa ato ang environment sa global warming, na until 2030 na lang ang ato ang pag ang time frame nga dapat mahatag ta og dako nga impact nga makatabang sa ato ang environment, kay kung dili pata makahatag og great impact within the time frame na 2030, pag mo 2031 na tapos wala gihapon nato siya natabangan, then dili crucial na jud daw kaayo siya nga matabangan ang ato ang planeta, no? So best ways to prevent environmental degradation: reduce our overall consumption of resources. So kaning pag-alaga sa ato ang environment, elementary pa ni ato ang ginatun-an. Our natural resources is already dwindling due to overconsumption and abuses. Our mountains are already barren without trees to prevent landslides and hold water during rainy season. So meaning ani, no, kaning ato mga natural resources ba, mga puno, kaning ato ang mga kayutaan, mga fossil fuels, no, mga natural resources sama ng coal, dili nato na sila pasubraan og konsumo, kay wala jud siya maayong effect. Una, overconsumption will lead to starvation, kay mahutdan na ta ana, no, mahutdan ta ng mga butang. Ikaduha, ang overconsumption, no, will lead to problems kay kaning mga natural resources, they also have natural effects. Sama aning mga puno, pag naani sila, no, maghatag sa ato og oxygen, tapos mosuyop og carbon dioxide, ilahang roots maging serve as foundation, no, sa yuta. Sila ang mag-hold in place sa yuta og magsuyop sa tubig pag naay baha or pag naay kusog nga ulan. Next is reuse all the resources and materials that we possibly can. So meaning recycle. Young generations today do not have the basic understanding of maximization of resources. Everybody is glued to synthetic materials brought about by technology, sama anang plastic, no? Dili na kuan ma-recycle siya, pero ang iyang degradation or ang iyang bago siya madaot, dugay pa kayo. Tapos bisag asa ra pud lang, recycle what we can whenever we can. So kaning recycle dugay na kini. Related to the first and second principle, young generations are so extravagant in terms of material things, never knowing that these things have come. So meaning dili kaayo grateful, no? Commercialization also takes its toll when businesses and corporations produce surpluses for economic gains and profits without concern to what will be left for tomorrow. So mao lagi ni. So since na ta sa production, no, ang ato ang generation karon ba capable na in producing whatever we want, then produce without thinking or without taking in concern, no, the trash or ang mga products nga masubra, no, asa ipamutang, then sayang ang ato ang mga resources nga nagamit ana, mutang lang sa wala, malabay lang. Green transportation, luxury over healthy living is the norm of today's generation. Gone were the days when no less than aerial ureta declarator in ikauunladang bayan, bisikleta ang kailangan, no? So green transportation meaning dili ta magamit og mga mechanical vehicles, no? So karon na ning ginaingon na electronic cars ni Elon Musk, mga Tesla vehicles nga dili nagagamit og mechanical engine, instead, no, electric engine ang iyang gamit, wherein pwede ka magamit og reusable energy sama sa solar panels, windmills, no, mas safer na siya sa ato ang environment. Dili parehaan ning mechanical kay mo gamit man ni og gasolina. Ang gasolina ginakuha sa pagsunog sa mga coal or sa fossil fuels. Give back to the environment under the DENR law. When you cut a tree, plant and maintain a replacement. No? So kung puputol kag puno, no, nana siya ay katumbas nga magtanom ka og pila ka seedling ana niya para pag-abot sa panahon mao na pud to ato ang pwede magamit. Pero I don't think so, no, nga kuan ni siya nasunod jud ni siya sa ato ang nasunod sa katawhan, di lang sa Pilipinas kundi sa tibuok kalibutan. Next is the political crisis. Political crisis. Power and prestige is the name of the game. So, labi na karon nga bag-o lang ta ni agi sa eleksyon May 9, no, nag-eleksyon ta. Those who are in position looks at those who raise issues as their mortal enemies since they cannot leave their comfort zones. No, so ang mga mubatikos automatic kalaban jud na nila kay siyempre how dare you, no, question their position daw. One of the greatest manager I ever encountered is one who leave his air-conditioned room and walk around his area of responsibility by himself, and he found out that all those reports in that reaches his office are complete reverse, since all those people around him have no other purpose but to build their reputation by putting perfumes to their reports such as they look good from their boss, no? So ang example ani, no, kaysa personal experience siguro sa author, no, nga ang reports daw sa iyang amo kay kanya-kanyang pahumot lang sa iyang mga trabahante. In fact, tong iyang pag-check sa iyang mga trabahante dili day kini tinuod. So ang political crisis, the politics of crisis management, public leadership under pressure. So kani siya niagi sa Cambridge University nila Arjen Boyne, Paul T. Hart, Eric Stern, and Bengt Sandelius. Crisis management in political systems, 5 leadership challenges. Crisis management and public leadership. One said, between a politician and a leader is of great disparity, to say the least. Being a leader is the ability to influence and make change. So dugay na po siya, no, leader versus politician or boss. Ang politician, gina-view siya as a boss kung asa mag-mandate lang siya or magsugo. Ang leader is there to inspire, no, to be a role model, no, to lead people. Ang politician naman is only there to command, no. So in short, ang politician is a boss, no. Ang iyahang mga tao ang iyang ginapatrabaho, but he takes all the upload or the mga kuan sa tao ba, pagpasalamat or mga achievement sa iyahatan maabot. The nature of crisis, determine ni siya. The epicenter of political crisis is power to control and manipulate. This results into temporary applauses but promotes luxury of living and financial gain. Next one is the ubiquity of crisis. Presence everywhere or in many places, especially simultaneously omnipresence. We must always anticipate that crisis abounds everywhere, anywhere, and every moment. Being aware is being ready. So as I have said, no, knowing the crisis will allow us to mitigate its harmful effects. So crisis management, leadership perspective. A blind leader will say that, do not follow me, I am lost too. But a great leader will say, come, we can do it. A leader is not self-centered. He is not the one who say I, me and myself. He always attributes accomplishments to his men, no? So ang great leader have confidence, no, sa iyang sarili that he can lead if the public. So ang ubang leader naman po no nga walay confidence sa ilang sarili, and a great leader is also no nga dili niya ginasolo ang mga accomplishment. So the next one is the religion crisis. This crisis may be brought about by several factors like fear and losing members on the part of religious leaders, defensive personality on the part of members. So how can this be managed? So ana si Peter B. Gudaitis, May 12, 2014, states disasters do not occur in secular vacuum. This means that the impact of a disaster on the lives of individual and the communities in which they live must be understood and responded to within the spiritual, social, and cultural context. So, in the preceding chapter, no, it is said that the World War III may be caused by religious conflict. So, how are we going to mitigate religion or religious crisis? Understand in the context of spirituality. If we are to look at religion as a broad perspective, there should be no difference at all. Since faith and belief goes together on the only one omnipresent, faith deficiency, so to speak. Faith defies science, so to speak. A science only believes on provable precepts, theories, and concepts, but faith has neither theory nor concepts to prove. So, believing on the unseen but present in faith is defined according to one's belief. If so, then there should be no argument, since all of us believers on the unseen God, or no matter how you call it, Kabunyan, Allah, God, or Bathala, no, and the likes, we believe in only one unseen and unknown, yet we argue as to who is what we believe in. So basa ko ang understanding, ang author nag-focus lang siya sa monotheistic nga view of God. So siguro nalimtan niya nga napay polytheistic belief, no, nga naatay dagan God, but ang bottom line no, nga nganong mag-away-away man tanong nga isa lang ang God. He may be called many names, Jah, Allah, Bathala, no, but He is God. Sama sa ang mga Kristiyanos ato ang ginatanaw nga pinakamagagahom kay ang Ginoo lang. Understand in the context of social and culture setting, there is a great dimension of difference when we consider social and cultural setup. The environment that shapes up the social behavior of the community differs significantly depending on political and economic status, and aggravated by old cultures of very high respected and values significantly diminished with the introduction of synthetic materials brought about by the so that's no more na siya ang sa religious day. Next is the management crisis. Ang management crisis naman, no, kay management is not limited only to having people under you, but it ranges from several styles and processes, where sometimes depends on one's leader, organic, and professional acumen. So naay unom ka klase nga pag-manage, no, para ma-prevent nato ning mga management crisis. So automatic management style, this may be the most classical type of management system that are applicable on the following scenarios. Military deployments, military commands require instant reactions and obedience because oftentimes you are talking about between life and death, which requires immediate action before question. So ang military discipline, perform before you question, sa jud na siya. So comply before you complain, di ay na siya, no, because of the seriousness of the decisions, no, kay ang mga moves ay niya kay between life and death. Search and rescue operations, on these situations no amount of argument is needed but action first is required. In rescue there is a life and properly at risk which requires immediate response, otherwise it will be too late. The objective of search and rescue to salvage or save as much as you can afford to save. So more on action, less on argument. Heavy industry, in industries production and precisions are the primary requirement for efficient outputs. It follows that discipline and skill goes together in unison to produce desired outcome. So ang heavy industries, no, so mga industriya kailangan dili communication, dili action, but skill o discipline o consistency. Sensitive laboratory experiments, in a laboratory activity, precision is the language that personnel only understand. There is no room for error, otherwise the entire project will be sacrificed. Hence only the experts are needed to do a task. So since experiments concerns science or sciences, mao gani ang mga laboratories na ay mga aparatos nga very delicate o very precise, kay gamay maliana, then it may be a loss to the experiment, or pwede niya maguba ang experiment, no, pwede niya mapasawala na lang ang talan efforts due to a minor inconvenience. So first responder situation, at any situation the first responder holds the key to the success and failure of the operation or task. So ang first responder kay daghan jud siya og responsibility in his shoulders because siya man ang first naka-arrive sa scene. Then he must be able to assess quickly and must convey precisely the information that he has observed as it is. No, the incompetence of the first responder put everything in compromise, such that the first responder must abide with establishing protocols to automatically, accordingly, avoiding more damages and even death. So pareha sa crime scene, no, ang first responder iyang i-cordon ang area to avoid ng disruption or ang contamination sa crime scene. So kung dili na ikuan, then it will cause the operation or it will cause the crime scene kung dili niya i-cordon or alagaan nagmaayong bantayan. Emergency room, surgical settings. So in hospitals, the nature of emergency follows an urgency. Fast action siya, of action, and such action must also be precise according established rules. No room for errors, no to put the scenario in compromise. So surgical settings, this involves our health, no, so kailangan jud fast and precise kay in any minute pwede mag-agaw buhay. Affiliative management style, a leader who does not act on itself, instead consults his affiliates before making a well-informed decision. Sama sa mga pharaoh sa unang panahon, no, pharaohs, no, mura na sila mga hari, then naa sila yung mga advisors sa ilahang gilid, no, bago nila patupad or iingon ang ilahang mga ideas or decisions, ilahang pa-advise. Coaching management style. This applies before leaving a subordinate to do his task, meaning new member of workforce does not necessarily understand and or familiar with all the process and targets of the organization. Therefore, he needs to be briefed. So, from the word itself, no, coaching. Kailangan siyang i-coach. Democratic management style. Some said this style results to less productivity since it allows a lot of arguments trying to listen and consider everybody's point of view that commonly ends to non-productivity. So, democratic style. So, everyone has a say. Kita tanan na atay opportunity nga mapadala ang ato ang mga hinaing. So, yes, it is true gyud no nga less productive ni siya nga klase of management because if everyone's idea will be catered, no, naadyoy uban ana nga mga ideas that are not very efficient for the welfare of the organization, no, na hidden agenda ang uban ana or for personal gain ang ilang opinions. So that's why, no, ang mag-manage must have an authority and must know the do's and don'ts. Pace setting management style. Strong leaders gives targets or quota to each of their subordinates and challenge them with more returns out from more outputs. These managers set up the pace by setting themselves as an example of productivity. Excuse. So, ang pace setting management style, no, is setting the bar higher. And to set the bar higher, the leader himself must portray himself as a role model. Visionary management style. These leaders are futuristic leaders that they think outside the box and never get satisfied with just complying with, no? So meaning they think of outcomes in every activity or task. They think on development rather than mediocrity. And the next one is the strategies to mitigate nature-induced crisis. So in this lesson, no, this is more concerned about the nature-induced crisis such as natural disasters. So the DRRM policies and strategies. These are comprehensive rules from national government office cascaded down to the local governments, no? So gikan sa national government, no, sa taas atong ilang disperse sa local governments. It is composed of different line agencies where each of the line agencies are given their specific responsibilities to avert or mitigate crisis disaster. Since kita, no, example Pilipinas, lain-lain og terrain ang bawat lungsod, no? That's why, no, every local government has its own approach or has its own standard operating procedures in addressing nature-induced crisis. So, Republic of the Philippines National Disaster Coordinating Council or the National Disaster Management Center. This is at Camp General Emilio Aguinaldo, Quezon City, Philippines. Voltaire T. Gasmin, the Secretary of National Defense and Chairperson of National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, no, or DRRMC. So implementing rules and regulations of Republic Act number 10121, also known as an act strengthening the Philippine disaster risk reduction and management system, providing for the national framework and institutionalizing the National disaster risk reduction and management plan, appropriate funds therefore and for other purposes. So the rule 1 in this lesson is the general provisions. The section 1 states that these rules shall be known and cited as the implementing rules on and regulations of Republic Act number 10121, also known as the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010. Section 2 is the purpose of this Republic Act. These rules are hereby promulgated to prescribe the manner, procedure, and guidelines for the implementation of PDRRM Act of 2010 to facilitate compliance therein and achieve the objectives thereof. So the purpose of this is to create a system of procedures and guidelines, no? The declaration of policy, it is the policy of the state to uphold the people's constitutional rights to life and property by addressing the root cause of vulnerabilities to disasters. Now we will proceed to the next rule. Definition of terms. So, on definition of terms, no, composed of words lang siya. Used in the Republic Act number 10121, its purpose is to give description of the meaning of the subject of the word. So, meaning, mura ni siya og content sa dictionary. So, kung sa libro pa, murag glossary ni siya. So, sama sa word na gigamit sa Republic Act nga adaptation, then siya definition na the adjustment in natural or human systems in response to actual or expected climatic stimuli or their effects which moderate harm or exploits beneficial opportunities. No, muna na siya og glossary of words in order to have further understanding on the topics being discussed sa Republic Act number 10121. Next one is the Rule 3, the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. So the section 1 is the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council is the present National Disaster Coordinating Council, no? And they shall henceforth be known as the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, NDRRMC. Mao ni sila ang mga nagatek sa ato pag naay mga rainfall, mga earthquake, no? Sama sa ilang pangalan, National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. So mauna siya yung ilang approach in order para ma-mitigate ang isa ka katalagman, ang pag-text, pag-post sa social media by informing the public. Section 2, composition. The National Council shall be headed by the Secretary of the National Defense, no? Og naa na po diha ang DILG ug ang National Economic and Development Authority. Og napay mga ubang agency nga involved ani, no? Even DepEd and DOJ, DOLE, DOT, DBM, DOJ. And also CHED, no? Involved po sila ani. Agencies. So functions and responsibilities. Except for the policy-making function of the NDRRMC, the RRMC shall likewise carry out coordination, integration, supervision, monitoring, and evaluation functions covering regional council members, agencies, and local disaster risk reduction management councils. No? So that is for the Rule 3. Next is the Rule number 4, Regional Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. So, Section 1 of the Regional Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council is the current Regional Disasters Coordinating Council shall henceforth be known as the Regional Local Risk Reduction Management Council. So, kung gaya na national, na this is the Local Disaster Risk Reduction. The existing provincial, city, and municipal disaster coordinating councils shall henceforth be known as the provincial, city, and municipal disaster risk reduction and management councils. The barangay disaster coordinating council shall cease to exist, and its powers and functions shall henceforth be assumed by the existing barangays development council or BDC, which shall serve the LDRRMCs in every barangay. So sila ang mga local disaster risk reduction and management councils, ang mga BDC. No? Next is the composition. As will be determined by the LDRRMC. It shall be composed of but not limited to, no, ang local chief executive, chairperson, the local planning and development officer, the head of LDRRMO, the head of the local social welfare, o mga uban pang personalities nga gikan sa matag iyang government agency, sama sa napod rin sa PNP o ang AFP, mga kasundaluhan o kapulisan. So next is the rule number 6, Local Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office. Establishment of an office is the section 1. Created an LDRRMO in every province, city, and municipality under the barangay, under the office of the governor, city, or municipality mayor respectively, and a barangay disaster risk reduction and management committee as headed by the punong barangay. So ang local, no, ang local disaster risk reduction management office, no, ang mag-lead siya kay ang punong barangay. Since ang composition and structure shall be initially organized and composed of the DRRMO to be assisted by 3 staff responsible for 1 administration and training, 2 for research and planning, and 3 operations and warning. So naapod siya yung mga qualifications, no, in order to be a member or to be a worker for the LDRRMO. And the functions are defined in the local ordinance that this local government follow, linking local database with national database, no, kung sa kuan pa na PNP murag siras tirada ba, the coordination by linking local database with the national database, access to database, who are the personalities who have access. Next is the rule number 7, the Office of Civil Defense. The mandate is the Office of Civil Defense, OCD, as the implementing arm of the National Council. Shall have the primary mission of administering a comprehensive national civil defense and disaster risk reduction and management program by providing leadership in the continuous development of strategic and hazard and manage consequences and disasters. Next is the Rule 8, National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Training Institute. Next one is the accreditation, the Rule 9, mobilization and protection of disaster volunteers and National Reserve Corps, CSOS, and private sectors. So, ang accreditation ay niya the government agency, CSO, private sectors, and LGUs. So, naapoy apel siguro aning mga NGO may mobilize individuals or organized volunteers to augment their respective personnel complement and logistical requirements in the delivery of the disaster risk reduction programs and activities. The agencies, CSO, private sectors, and LGUs concerned shall take full responsibility for the enhancement, welfare, and protection of their volunteers, and shall submit the list of volunteers to the OCD through the LDRMOS, no, for accreditation and inclusion in the database of the community disaster volunteers. So, a national roster na siya'y listahan of accreditation community disasters volunteers. So, ang ginatawagan niya kay ACDVS. Kung asa kailangan niyo mag-take og National Service Reserve Corps or INSRC under RA 9163 of National Service Training Program or NSTP. So the next one is the rule number 10, integration of disaster risk reduction education into the school program and mandatory training for the public sector employees. So since ang purpose man niya dito pagikan ta sa rule 1 is to create a procedure in approaching natural disasters. So kailangan to siyang matudlo sa mga kabatan-unan. That's why natay inclusion or ato na siyang gi-appeal sa school curricula, no, para ma-engage ang mga bata ani nga mga crisis or ma-aware sila ba, matagaan sila consciousness or enlightenment ang about ani nga mga issues nga posible nilang atubangon sa ilahang future life. Coordinating during emergencies. So diri moabot ang mga paglink sa local and national ug sa mga offices sa local, no, if it only involves local. Next is the declaration of state of calamity. Ang pag-declare sa state of calamity, o ang pag-lift sa state of calamity by the President. Declaration and lifting of state of calamity by the local sanggunian, no, sa barangay. So nana siya mga kriteriya or mga basihan if it is allowed to be declared as under the state of calamity. Criteria in recommending the declaration of lifting. So naadri ang guidelines kung unsa ang pwedeng buhaton para matawag siya or makadeclare ang isa ka lungsod nga it is under the state of calamity. Remedial measures, mandatory remedial measures. So naadri ang measures. Declaration of state calamity shall make mandatory and immediate undertaking of the following remedial measures by member agencies concerned as defined in the act. So kung mamahal ang mga presyo, mauna na siya diya. Programming, reprogramming of funds. Next is the mechanism for international humanitarian assistance. So ang pagpangayo og assistance, no, a call for international assistance may be issued by the President of the Philippines upon the recommendation of chairman. For example, ang COVID-19, no, under the state of calamity gud ta kay naka-lockdown gud ta. Tapos lack of budget. So muna nag-request ta for international assistance. Also dili lang pud kita ang pwede mga assistance, no, pwede pud ta mohatag og assistance sa lain authorized importation and donation. The importation and donation of food, clothing, medicine, and equipment for relief and recovery and other disaster management and recovery related supplies is hereby authorized in the accordance with section 105 of the Tariff and Customs Code of the Philippines as amended and the prevailing provision of the General Appropriations Act covering national internal revenue taxes and import duties of national and local government agencies. So, ang any importation and donation intended for the operation of the NDRRMC and its member agencies shall be treated as importations by and or donations to the NDRRMC. So, no payment of duties and taxes by concerned members agency, if any, shall be subject to deferred payment scheme. Foreign donations and importations for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief shall also be guided with the international disaster response. So, it involves the taxes and tariffs, no? Pag related ang mga goods sa calamity. The next one is the Rule 15, Inventory and Monitoring of all relief goods. So, ang Rule 15, no? The National Council shall provide the guidelines on the inventory and disposition and utilization and monitoring of all relief goods, including donations, within a reasonable period in order to ensure the proper disposition of useful. Dili pareha atong sa Yolanda ba? Asa naman din nga role ni? Ang mga pagkaon kay na bulok kay gi-stock, gitaguan. Kinsa kay nagtago. Prohibited acts. Any person, group, or corporations who commit any of the following prohibited acts shall be liable and be subjected to the penalties as prescribed in Section 20 of the Act and Rule 17 hereunder. Dereliction of duties which leads to destruction, loss of lives, critical damage and facilities, and misuse of funds. Preventing the entry and distribution of relief goods in disaster-stricken areas. So, kinsa kay na priso atong sa kuano Yolanda? I wonder. Buying for consumption or resale from disaster relief agencies such as DSWD, NFA, PRC. So, bawal na siya ang pagpalit o pagbaligya aning mga relief goods. Buying for consumption or resale from the recipient disaster affected persons. So, kung tahay, ako og si Juan na bagyuhan. Si Juan, tanaw na ko, dato. Si Juan, naman siguro siya supply. Paliton ko na 100 ang imong bugas bay. So, bawal na siya. Selling of relief goods, equipment of other aid commodities, which is intended for distribution to disaster victims. No, kay grabe na po nang kung ano yung mangwarta pag yung ka. Forcibly seizing relief goods, equipment, or other aid commodities intended for or consigned to a specific group of victims or relief agency. So, ang prohibited acts, no, this involves mga fraudulent actions or unethical actions in times of calamities. Next is the penal clause, the Rule 17. Penalty and fines. Penalty and fines. Any individual, corporation, partnership, association, or other judicial entity that commits any prohibited acts provided for in Section 19 of the Act shall be prosecuted and upon conviction shall suffer a fine of not less than 50,000 pesos or any amount not to exceed 500,000 pesos. O pwede po siya mapriso. No? 12 years po do. So, next is the local disaster risk reduction and management. The present local calamity funds shall henceforth be known as the local disaster risk reduction and management fund. So, dari sa LDRRM, dari na to makita ang specific trust fund guidelines on fund tracking and utilization of funds, public disclosure of fund utilization. So, diha na makita ang mura og liquidation sa mga nagamit na funds. 19, National Risk Reduction and Management. So, ang una kay local. So, kani siya naman po sa fund, utilization of fund, sa amount, sa quick response fund, fund accounting, finding the DRRM projects. No? Next is the Rule 20, funding of the OCD. So sa funding, it always includes the budget. So ang budget magdepende sa imuang it will depend on your locality as lead agency to carry out the provisions of the act. The OCD shall be allocated a budget of 1 billion pesos revolving fund starting from the effectivity of this National Council. So next is the annual report. Deadline of the annual report. The National Council through the OCD shall submit to the office of the President, the Senate, and the House of Representatives within the first quarter of the succeeding year an annual report related to the progress. So kung tayo sa Marawi, hantod karon siguro nagapasa gyapon na sila annual report. So next is Rule 22, Congressional Oversight Committee. So ang function niya is to create and compose under Section 26 of Act shall monitor and oversee the implementation of the provision thereof. The National Council may submit proposed remedial legislation to the Congressional Oversight Committee. Next is transitory provision, the Rule 23. Existing practices guidelines pending the development and approval of the necessary guidelines cited in the Act. And these rules, example, accreditation of volunteers, etc. within the period of specified herein, existing practice and procedures shall be maintained. Rule 24, Separability Clause, Validity Provision. If any provision of these rules shall be held unconstitutional or invalid, the other provisions not otherwise affected shall remain in full force and effect. Rule 25 is the amendatory clause. Amendment, the National Council through its chairperson may cause the amendment of the implementing rules and regulations as the need arises. So pwede na to na siyang i-implement pa, no? Na siya amendatory clause. Hindi siya permanent, pwede siyang ma-revise. Effectivity clause, publication. These rules shall take effect 15 days following the complete publication thereof in newspaper of general circulation sa September 27, 2010. Ito muna siya ang last rule. So the reporting is done po, sir. Thank you for watching and listening. Stay safe and God bless. And this is my report for Cream 6 for our finals in the second semester of the school year 2020-2021. Salamat.